I didn't use any expensive books, no tutoring, no prep classes. Just by using these 5 tips, I was able to get this score, which got me into an Ivy League university. So let me break them down for you one by one. First, the answer is never ambiguous. When you're doing the reading and writing section, it can often feel like there might be 2 or 3 answer choices that could be correct. But always remember that the SAT is a standardized test, so there has to be one very clear correct answer. And all of the information you need to get to that answer will be in the passage itself. For example, let's look at an actual practice test. This question asks what the main purpose of this passage is. I chose option D because the author questions a lot of things in this passage. For example, what are these ceremonies and why should we take part in them? What are these professions and why should we make money out of them? From beginning to end, she constantly asks questions, and she's clearly questioning how women will enter the workforce. But actually, she never questions specifically the feasibility of this undertaking. She asks what terms women should join this undertaking on, or where this undertaking will lead us, but she never directly questions the feasibility or the possibility that it can be realistically done. All of the answer choices seem vaguely plausible, but the only one that's very directly stated in the passage is option B, because she says, now we are pressed for time. And then again, we have very little time in which to answer these questions. While the main point seems like she's questioning something, she's not questioning the feasibility, so just take away that option. While all of these 4 options seem like they could be the main idea of the passage, you need to pay attention to every single word of the answer choice. And the one that's right will always be stated very directly in the passage itself. The most important thing to remember while studying for the reading section is to never infer anything. Everything you need will be stated crystal clear in the passage itself. My second tip is to use flashcards. Anytime you get a question wrong on any kind of practice test, pick up a flashcard and write down 3 things. 1, a brief of the question. 2, why did you get it wrong? And 3, how are you going to avoid this mistake in the future? For example, in this practice test, I got question 20 wrong, which was a fill in the blank. They did significantly less regular volunteer work, blank, and I wrote compared with students. But actually, my mistake was forgetting that the word less already means comparison. Therefore, by choosing option D, I was wasting this whole word. How I'm going to avoid this in future is by remembering that anytime I have something like less or greater or equal, that already means comparison. And I chose this question specifically as an example because a very similar question in a different passage came up on my actual test day. And because I had made a flashcard and gone through it regularly, I immediately knew not to fall into the trap of choosing the answer choice with the word compared. And I got that question right in the actual test. Once you do this, you have a very handy set of flashcards that you can just flip through every now and then, maybe once or twice a week. And every time you do this, learning from those past mistakes will help you improve your score. The SAT also has a pattern, which means the same kind of questions keep coming up over and over again. And these flashcards will help you find that pattern and learn from it, so that you're familiar with any kind of question that can be asked in the SAT. My third tip is to use the official study guide. It really surprises me how many people either don't know about this guide or they don't use it. But it's an extremely important resource because it's made by the College Board itself, and it discusses the inner workings of the test. This is available for completely free online. I like to use it as both a starting point and an ending checklist. This guide also has sample questions covering any type of question you could possibly be asked on the SAT. Let's look at the sample writing questions. For example, this question is asking which phrase is the best one to use in this given sentence. The answer here is the smallest one, which is option D, because we can see that all the other options have repetitive elements. For example, B repeats current and right now. C repeats now and currently, which mean the same thing. But the key thing here is the objective. You must achieve economy of expression. This means that you should always choose the shortest answer choice because it reduces redundancy or wordiness. This type of question comes up on almost every SAT exam ever, and this objective always holds true. The shortest answer choice is the one that achieves this economy of expression, and so that's the one you can automatically select. You want to focus specifically on noting down these objectives. When I was studying, I had a pack of flashcards specifically for each and every objective. And the SAT has a very limited set of objectives. So once you've covered the 15 to 20 key points or the types of questions that can be asked on every section, you're good to go. There is literally nothing that can stop you from getting a perfect score. My fourth tip is that lower is actually better. A lot of times we tend to look at our first few practice test scores and label ourselves as either smart or stupid. But actually this tendency does no good. The lower you score on your initial practice test, the better it is for you. Because we have a tendency to remember the things that we get wrong much more than the things that we get right. It's just how our brains are wired. Because when we get something wrong in a practice test, we have this fear of getting the same thing wrong on the actual test day. Think about it, if you get a question wrong, you'll spend a lot of time analyzing it, or at least you should be, and you'll make a flashcard about it, which you look through every now and then. So the chances that you get that concept right on the actual test are really high. Versus if you get something right on your first practice test, you probably won't even look at the question again, even though it could just be that you guessed the right answer and you don't really know the concept. So if you get a low score on your first few practice tests, don't be disheartened. It's actually much more of a good thing than you realize. And my final tip is to time block your practice tests. The SAT with the essay section takes 4 hours and 7 minutes. And it's extremely important to take practice tests under those timed conditions because you need to build the focus, concentration, and endurance to be able to sit through such a long test and actually do well. But 4 hours is a long chunk of time. It's almost 1/3 of your waking hours. If you have a task that takes 30 minutes, it's easy to find time here and there. But with the SAT, it's more helpful to sit down with your calendar and block off a big chunk of 4 hours for 1 to 2 practice tests each week. When I was studying for the SAT, a lot of times I would think, I'll take a practice test this weekend, and I wouldn't, because the situation would be that I had badminton practice in 2 hours, or I had an event in 3 hours, and I didn't actually have that 4-hour chunk of time to take a test. So the best way to make sure that you do it is to block it into your calendar. That block is now fixed and immovable, and during that time, your only task is to take the practice test. I find that this often declutters my mind, helps me actually stick to a schedule, and increases my focus when I'm doing that actual practice test. I will be making another video very soon where I give you tips and tricks that you can use while actually solving the SAT questions. If you're new here, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button below. We talk about college applications, being a student, the SAT, and much more on this channel every week. And I will see you very soon with a brand new video.